uncertainty around us, and I think we've created some momentum there. So we got a lot of challenges. First off, defensively, improving from last year. I do think signing a lot of kids in the offseason that were mid-years and really having our first spring. I think if you look around the country, first-year staffs really struggled, especially on defense. And so work to improve there. Got a lot of good players coming back on offense, led by the quarterback. So challenge to get him to play. I think he played as well as anybody in the country at times.
At this event 12 years ago, you brought your All-SEC ballot. Purdy voted for Tim Tebow as preseason All-SEC quarterback. I was curious, who would be your pick this year for preseason All-SEC quarterback?
All right. I didn't even remember that 12 years ago, but now that you say that, because I believe there was something about someone who didn't have Tebow first team All-SEC. As usual, I was accused of that. So I brought my ballot to show everyone, to show Urban. So what was the second part of the question? You got me all off. Now we're going to go back to Urban Meyer, Tebow, and singing Rock Me Happy and Smile all night long. That part.
Coach, you seem to enjoy tweeting about Coach Saban especially. Do you know if he's seen your tweets or what his reaction's been?
Well, he's certainly not on Twitter, we know that. Now, Linda, his assistant, is probably prints them out, especially the ones that he may not like. And so he probably does see those. But I think it's all in fun.
Welcome in, everybody, to Scout's Eye on Football. I am Chris Landry, excited to be with you today, and what we hope to be in a, well, it's not a new venture, but certainly as we've branched out and have partnered with the Podcast Park folks in Atlanta, we really appreciate everybody's patience as we've tried to transition things. For those of you, many of you may listen to my SEC show that I do, and we've been working to get that going. Now that we've got that going, basically we have a complete channel on the Landry Football Channel on Podcast Park, where you can listen to all these shows. We're going to be with you every day at 5 p.m. Central, unless to do this show live. But certainly, you know, it's something that we've tried to put together and involve people from a live, you know, viewing standpoint, participation standpoint, and we want you in the chat room. But we're obviously do the on Mondays and Thursdays at 5 p.m. Central, the SEC show. On Tuesdays, we're going to do Scout's Eye on Football. On Wednesdays at 5 p.m., Landry Football Podcast. And the podcast is going to drop the next morning, but you can catch it live and you can get the information, the inside information, the news information that we have for you, ahead of maybe other folks, because we're going to have the latest details of what's going on. So a reminder, search for and like and subscribe to the Landry Football Podcast channel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. So you can listen to us right here on the Scout's Eye on Football Podcast. We are going to take a look at the news of the day. We'll usually start with that, provided there's news that is worthy of that. And there's a few things going on. I'm going to start in the NFL where tough news to hear about personally with Greg Knapp, a good friend who is the quarterback coach with the New York Jets. He's been around for a long time. Suffered a bike accident. He was hit, and he's in serious condition. So if you are of the mindset, please keep him in your prayers. That's a very difficult situation. I hate to even mention this because it's not relevant, but it is a football show, and I want to mention that it's going to have an effect on the Jets. It's not what's important right now. His health and his well-being is. But he's the quarterback coach with a rookie quarterback that this will have an effect of him, and it certainly looked like a long road. So we wish the best there. Now, there was kind of a quote-unquote labeled as breaking news today about Aaron Rodgers being offered and turning down a contract extension. Look, maybe there's something there. For those of you that listen to this show are members of the Landry Football Podcast, we've talked about the contract that was offered him several weeks ago. It turned down. Now, is it something else, something different? We'll see. The bottom line is this on Aaron Rodgers. He is not wanting to play for the team. And I think what it really comes down to, the Packers who have him under contract could dig their heels in. He'll be a no-show for camp, or he will, whatever. People have asked me, how would you handle it? How would you deal with it? Well, the lack of communication has put him in this situation. I think the best thing for them to do would be to go to him and say, look, if you are not interested in playing for us, then what we'd like to ask you to do is we'll restructure your deal backwards 1 year, and we'll trade you at the end of the year. But we need you here. We need you involved, engaged, and that's what we need from you. I think you've got some time to make a trade if that's what you want to do. The Packers have been dug in saying they're not going to trade him. So I don't know that there's a whole lot of advancement there. I think you're going to see a little bit of the clickbait media of, oh, this is new today, and this is kind of what's happening. I don't know that there's a whole lot there. Other news around the day, very difficult to hear about Cam Akers, seizing injury, torn Achilles. Very difficult to see that take place with the Rams. That's a season ender. That's not coming back this year. You don't want to rush that. Not that you would anyway, but getting him back is just not going to be a reality. Look, they like their backs. There's no question about it. They've got some good backs. They've got Henderson. They've got Calais. They've got Funk. But they need to add a guy. They really do, because what you have to prepare for at this point is what happens if the next guy goes down. If you don't address that position right now, then you're going to put yourself behind the 8 ball, because then it's going to get tougher and tougher. Now, look, there are going to be some other options after the first round of cuts. It's okay. You're not going to sign anybody and offer a lot of money unless you go out and offer an Adrian Peterson, in which case you would be willing to give money. You get somebody in there that can help you, that may not be the replacement, but is now the replacement of the guys that are now moving up. I think that's really important. And then, adjust that after the cuts, because you're dealing with a pretty good team he was such a huge factor, and now he's not going to be there. They're not are going to be in a panic move, but let's watch that. Other news of the day, some other signings, some other free agent visit. The Saints had a linebacker visit in. Find out who it is and all the details over at LandryFootball.com, where you can get the scouting season offer today. Take advantage of it. Get all the inside information, all the breakdowns as we provide for you right there. In college football news, a couple of things that I think's interesting. First of all, to stay on the unfortunate injury front, very difficult. Kentucky losing sophomore tight end Keaton Upshaw. He suffered a season-ending injury. 6'6", 245, really good. Second best receiver. He's a hybrid wide receiver tight end. caught 16 balls for him last year and was really good in the red zone. This is, I was looking forward to him being teamed up with Wendell Robinson. Tough loss for them. It's tough news to be dealing with injuries this early and not even work. You have your workouts and your training, not even into camps, and we've got injuries. But that's part of the game. Find out some other news in Georgia Tech getting a verbal commitment. Learn a little bit more about Carson Strong. It's one of the best quarterbacks in the country that you don't know a whole lot about. Check into, is the Rose Bowl going to continue to be a problem as we move towards playoff? Another big commitment for Oklahoma. Nice commitment from Louisiana Lafayette as well. I want to end the college news with, did you hear about Nick Saban speaking at a clinic, a coaching clinic in Texas? And folks, Nick Saban doesn't say things just to say them, just to make conversation. There's a message in everything he says. He's speaking to recruits. He's speaking to his team. He's speaking to those people through the media, through the opportunities. And when he speaks anywhere, it's going to get picked up and talked about. He was very vocal about Bryce Young is in line for a 7-figure, that's $1 million, NLI deal. He's trending. Why is he doing that? Folks, I've explained that when this whole situation started. That's just what's going to happen in recruiting. That is saying, here's a quarterback. They haven't officially named him a starter. He hasn't started a game yet there. He's going to be the starter for Alabama. That's a message saying, and he talked about, that's the brand of Alabama and all that kind of stuff. The message is, if you're a recruit out there, look at what you can make for a guy that's not even starting. Now, he doesn't have to say he hasn't started. Everyone knows that. It's the Alabama quarterback. You think that helps in recruiting? Wonder what Matt Corral's getting. Wonder what JT Daniels is getting. You don't think people are going to keep up with that? You don't think recruits and their families are going to keep up with that? Of course they are. And this is going to be welcome to the new age of, yeah, we're going to talk about what our guys make, particularly when it's going to help us in recruiting. So that's some news of the day. I do want to make a switch to discuss today about my time at the Manning Passing Academy this weekend. And I want to talk a little bit about quarterback techniques, and don't have time to go through all of the messaging, but a lot of what I talk about and what I've been asked to for several years now, to talk about the evaluation process of quarterbacks, the teaching process of quarterbacks, that the Mannings do a really good job of teaching, and to give those kids a perspective from a scout and a coach, what we look for, from going, these kids now are in high school, the campers, and obviously they're having hopes, many of them, to play college ball. And the campers, what's great is they bring in these college kids as camp counselors, and they help the kids. So every high school group of quarterbacks get campers that are coached by a college quarterback. And so there's a lot of benefit that the camp counselors and the campers get through this process. And one of the things that, and I'll address this off the top, everybody says, well, what's the deal with Arch Manning and where is he going? There's nothing new on that. I've heard people say things like, well, things are changing or trending. Look, they know kind of where they are and how they want to go through the process, and they'll continue to do that. I have a feel, and I'll get to it at the appropriate points in time where it's probably leaning, but it's so early that it doesn't really matter where he's leaning now. But I think that there's the young man is very impressive. I spent time with him at LSU recently. He's a very, very talented young man, Arch Manning is. But on to what I want to discuss in the quarterback mechanics and the teaching points. The one thing I like to do is kind of explain, look, there are many different types of quarterbacks. And, what you've got to learn in regardless what you are is you've got to learn the techniques to drop back. You've got to learn, if you're a runner, and maybe develop some of your skills and your movement skills in the pocket, outside the pocket. You got to work on sprint outs. You have a lot of guys that are hybrids of both. Regardless of the style of play, I want to start with getting into the quarterback's mind and understanding that you got to build from a coaching standpoint a rapport and a trust with your coaches and the coaches with your player. You got to have a sense of pride about what you're doing in playing the quarterback position. You got to be motivated to be the leader because you are the de facto leader, even if you're not by nature a leader. And with confidence, in you fake it till you make it. You gotta have, as a young kid, you gotta have that confidence. You gotta have that fearless attitude. Not be afraid to make mistakes because you're gonna make them. I think you got to really get into that. And one of the things I discuss with them about is take ownership, take leadership. Get out there and do extra work. Get out there and do extra film work. That's going to put some peer pressure on your receivers, your backs, your linemen to do extra things themselves. Our quarterback's doing it. He's the star. He's the leader. If you've got a veteran team and you're a young quarterback, what's the best way to earn their respect? Get in there, do the extra stuff. If you're a quarterback and you do everything you're asked of, you're not going to be successful. You got to do everything that's asked of you, and then you've got to do extra. You've got to do more. You've got to want to be great. You've got to build that mindset to be great, and it starts at a very young age. And so it's extra lifting, it's extra work on nutrition, it's extra work on rehab, it's extra work on getting the proper amount of rest. It's extra. It's what's really important. Then I get into some of the mechanics, throwing mechanics, placement of the ball and foot placement. Good throwing mechanics start with good, proper ball and foot placement. And what you like to do is the back foot is placed on a perpendicular to the hips. The front foot is set at about a 45-degree angle to the back foot, slightly wider than the shoulder width. The positions in the feet in line with the step of the quarterback takes when throwing the football is extremely important. You've got to make sure that your feet, your hips are aligned with the target. It allows you to throw the football with better accuracy. If you think about pitching and the importance of accuracy of pitching, it's not unlike, it's got a lot of similarities, but with more movement skills. You're not tied to the mound, but foot placement and arm placement is really important. The ball is placed in a comfortable position, slightly in front of the back shoulder, secured with both hands. And I teach quarterbacks to keep the ball above the chest and parallel to the shoulders when throwing. There's a drill I use called hitting the wall. Hitting the wall is something that helps position the ball correctly during the throwing motion. The quarterback stands in front of a wall and with his feet positioned to throw at a target directly away from it. When he cocks his arm to throw, the nose of the ball should just tap the wall. Then I get to the snap. The snap is an essential part of developing velocity when releasing the ball, it's paramount that quarterbacks develop this technique to maximize their throwing ability. You don't have to be a big 250-pound, 260-pound, 240-pound. What you need is to be limber and loose to have strong velocity on the ball. So I go through some checkpoints, and I do a couple of things. One is a triangle checkpoint, and with the elbows level, okay, at the base, you're loaded with the wrist in a cock position off the back shoulder. Okay, the triangle shape provides for a powerful position to launch the football. And this pre-throw position reduces the tendency to wind up. You don't want to wind up. Takes too much time. Be in a position to throw it. Okay, and aligns the throwing arm in a position to generate the arm power, reduce the wasted motion, resulting in a faster release. Then the checkpoint number 2 is what I call the short circle. Trigger the arm circle by bringing the ball from the carriage to a loaded position. Ideally, the quarterback should push the ball up and back away from the chest, never bringing the ball down below the chest and looping it around. This is going to shorten the arm action and quicken the release time. You don't want that. Then the third checkpoint is the L position. Okay, then you move from the circle position, the move to the L position by bringing the ball further up and back, pointing the nose of the ball away from the target. When the arm is in that L position, it helps to maximize arm power and acceleration. It's keeping the ball tight to your head. It will result in a high elbow drive, maximizing that throwing power and minimizing strains as well on your arm. Then I like to call the next checkpoint is to elevate to the 0 spot. The lead position, the elbow has to be in to support the wrist. You may have heard coaches talk about get the elbow up, because the elbow only needs to go high enough to get over and ahead of the shoulder on the throw. The smoothness and the efficiency of this move is the key to consistent power and accuracy. The 0 position places the elbow 6 inches ahead of the shoulder, 45 degrees up and out. The 0 position is what we call, an orthopedic term given to the position because the rotator cuff muscles are neutral with no arm strain. So it is the optimal position to be able to throw the football. And then the arm extension. The throwing arm now releases its energy, extending outward and upward towards the extended target. Complete extension and firing the wrist at the exact moment, maximizing power, accuracy, spiral of the ball, throwing over the top is what you're looking for. And you hear that, throw it over the top. It's really important to get really good velocity. So those are some things I go over and demonstrate to them, and certainly with the great quarterbacks there that can kind of go through that, use it as a model, it really is helpful. I always say in the evaluation, more than any other position, that quarterback, again, I'm going to go back to, has to have total dedication to the game, must not be an excuse maker type of guy. You have to develop a cadence. You might be a meek guy publicly, you may not be the life of the party, but when you get on the field, and you may not be rah-rah, none of that is necessary. But when you get on the field, you have to have a cadence. Down, set, they've got to hear you. You got to command it. You got to live it. If you're very weak speaking, you're going to have a hard time. There's no question about it. You got to have an understanding of defensive tactics, how to catalog, how to beat those coverages. You got to have timing and confidence in your receivers. Well, how do you do that? You got to get them to come out and work with you. You get them to have workout partners, don't you? You get them to have route running, sessions as well. So you got to have some quickness to get away from under center smoothly. I think that's really important. The foot quickness to elude in the pocket, keep your eyes downfield. What do you teach in basketball? Kids, you don't dribble with your head down, right? You've got to dribble, and you put something to block them so they can't see. The ball's coming back up. You got to keep your head up, because if you're dribbling with your head down, you can't see guys cutting, movement. You got to keep your head down. You keep your head up. In football, quarterback position, you got to keep your head up. You've got to be able to, from a peripheral vision and a feel and a timing. You got to have a clock in your head. You hear that term. You got to see and feel pressure and know it and understand protections and look right at it. And when everything's kind of breaking around you, step up, slide. You've got to develop that. It just doesn't wake up and have it. You've got to really develop it. Mental awareness, competitiveness, accuracy are the three most important qualities. Release type, arm strength, body size, strength, production, those are all important, but there are the 4th through 7th critical factors. The other factors I look for: speed, athletic ability, ball mechanics, setup quickness, avoid skills. Those things are really, really important to look at. So that's a look and an understanding of the quarterback position. Got any questions? Certainly comments. Bring it in, and we certainly are going to maybe take a little bit of a view on this podcast of a look at things from a technical standpoint. Now, it's a little generic now. As we get into the season, we could tie it to maybe a certain game and how things happen. So I always say people always know the result. They don't know why, and we'll try to get to the whys and explain it. So give me your feedback. Do you like this type of stuff, or is it boring as hell? That's really important. I want to really know what you really feel about it. A reminder again, to search for, like, and subscribe to the Landry Football Podcast channel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, so you can listen to us here on Scout's Eye on College and Pro Football, the Landry Football Podcast, which will drop Thursday, and obviously SEC football and beyond as well. Also remind you that the LandryFootball.com is where you want to go to get not only information like this, but breakdowns. What's on Landry Football right now? Not just the notebooks with the news and notes every day, but the film room, scouting breakdowns rather, which involves film room analysis from last year in the spring of all the college programs. You can get all of that now on LandryFootball.com. Very simple. Just go on the left side, pick out the team or the conference. You maybe click on the SEC and you can see all the conference breakdowns in the post. Or if you just want to go to a specific one, you want to go to see the Kentucky one, click on that. You want to go see Indiana or Wisconsin or whatever, click on the school, click on the conference, it'll bring it, and you can find it there. And we certainly will be doing that, and with all the NFL teams with training camps starting up. Also want to provide a little something that I think is interesting, and we're going to move to that right now, and we're going to call it the coaching, scouting term of the day. And it's about bubble. You hear it talked about a lot, the defensive bubble. And then there's talked about bubble screen. This is a question that was asked about, so I figured I would take an opportunity to explain it. The defensive bubble refers to the yards between the first and second levels of the defense, defensive line and linebacker. So what it is, it's a natural soft spot in a defense because of their alignment. For instance, if you run a 4-man front, you will have a defensive tackle in a 3 technique position, which is the outside shade of the strong guard, and a 2 technique, which is the inside shade of the weak side guard. This forms 2 natural bubbles. The biggest is probably off the outside hip of the weak side guard, and the gap responsibility for this is probably going to be a linebacker, which you usually have. So there's a natural bubble that will form because the offensive line can gain ground before having to engage the linebacker. Really important to understand, because as opposed to the guy being right on him, you got a little bit of time. So the other bubble would be like between the C and the strong guard for the same reason. It's important for players to see the bubble, in particularly if you're running the option, any sort of option play. They're usually about 5 yards deep, which gives the linebackers time to read and react to any play. Now, you probably hear a lot about the bubble screen. What's the definition of a bubble screen in football? It's an offensive screen pass in football where the receivers line up wide on the far right side or the far left side of the field. When the quarterback snaps the ball, the receiver who's targeted will turn or run towards the quarterback to receive a pass, and then will attempt to run upfield after the catch. So the offense is going to attempt to put as many blockers in front of the receiver after the catch in order to gain as many yards after the catch as possible. I think one of the things I'll do at some point is go through all the screens. I think that's really good, valuable to some degree. I think understanding all the different types of screens, the tunnel screen, the bubble screen, there are different variations of it, different values that are brought into each of them. I want to bring a coaching point, and I'll do this from time to time, a coaching point of the day. And it's about linebackers and teaching linebackers, and particularly say in the 30 front, but it certainly applies in the 40 front as well. In the 30 front, the best way to teach linebackers, and I believe that I developed this more under Bill Belichick, but there was a lot to this when I was coaching for Bill Arnsparger. The best way to teach your linebackers is to have them learn the inside backer position first, because that's where you learn all the checks, all the calls, all the fronts, all the blocking schemes. And so if you learn it there, you get the full scope of what you need to learn. And then when you go to the Sam position or to the Will position, you have a better, keener understanding because you've seen it from the Mike position. Really important. And while doing that, you not only make the Will and the Sam linebacker more effective in their responsibility, but it also helps to communicate and understand what that Mike backer is doing. It also helps you cross-train guys. So you can then get your 3 best linebackers on the field. Not the Will backer goes down. You don't have to put the second guy up at Will. You know, it might be the 4th best linebacker on your team might be a Mike guy, and that allows you some flexibility. If you can play multiple positions, instead of having the next best guy at the position where the guy goes down, you can have your next best linebacker and your 3 best linebackers on the field at that point, and your top guy's down, your 4th best guy is in there. Much like when the offensive line, when you cross-train those guys. It's a little more difficult for offensive line because offensive line and defensive line stances, right hand or left hand stance, is quite a bit of a challenge. It's a challenge. It's difficult. It's not quite as difficult as being a switch hitter in baseball, but there's a lot of symmetry to that. I think that there's a misunderstanding. Because you play on one side, you can play on the other. Some can, but it's not as easy to play in a different stance. But one of the things you try to do is you need to have guys, unless they're elite left tackles, pardon me, to be able to be position versatile. Be able to play the center position, be able to play the guard position. Be able to play left or right guard. If you're at right tackle, your left tackle goes down. Your right tackle may be the next best left tackle on your team. So how does that play out? I mean, is your 3rd tackle, does he happen to be the backup left tackle, or is he a better guy that's on the right side, and your right tackle who has ability to play left tackle, you can move your right tackle to left tackle, and then your 3rd guy, which is now your 2nd guy, can play right tackle. getting guys cross-trained is really helpful to be able to play your best players and have the most amount of security in understanding responsibilities and limiting mistakes. You'd ideally like to get, and I think a lot of offensive line coaches are this way, would like to get their best 5 on the field. It's difficult. You may have a tackle that is really good in his pass set, but he really struggles at the point of attack, and he's high levered, and he's not good in the run game. Well, it depends on your system. If you're going to run a high energy, high pace, it's something that you may be able to live with. If you're going to have to really come off the ball and move the line of scrimmage, he may not be a good fit there. Same thing with a guard that he might be able to play right tackle, probably doesn't have the length and the foot quickness to live out at left tackle in some schemes. Some schemes you might be able to do it. So I think it's important to understand that. And I think cross-training guys. In the secondary, we do that a lot. You basically you're starting 5 defensive backs in today's world. If you're not starting the first snap, you're getting the most of your snaps in nickel, which is now your base. So how you deal with it? Well, who's your best slot cover guy? Because that's a starter position. So it's no longer who's your starting corner. You see depth charts, you see, flip cards or whatever, or programs if you get the starting corners. That's old school. You got 3. Who's your nickel corner? Who's your slot corner? Now, your best nickel guy might be an outside guy, and your third best corner might be an outside guy. But if your outside guy is the best slot guy, then but he's still better than the third corner on your team, well, you may line up when you having playing 2 corners, 2 outside guys, A and B. Well, A might go inside to nickel, and C will go out to outside. Or your third best guy may be your slot corner. You've got to cross-train guys, and you got to figure out what is your best situation to put the best guys on the field that can certainly marry up your ability to cover, marry up your ability to be able to play in space and tackle, because what people are going to do, how are you going to deal with the slot now? People are going to have smaller slots. You've got to stay with the quickness and cover the two-way goes. If you're going to stay with the big slots and the Y flex, are you big enough to do it? So do you have a big nickel, a cover nickel? You got to have both. You got to have flexibility. And so cross-training guys in all aspects really important. So wanted to get into that. Let's get to, don't have any questions there. Okay, no questions are in the mailbag today. So I want to get into a couple that was sent here. If I could mention, Chris, I hear you, here's what Jerome asked this. Chris, I hear you talking often about a complementary football between offense and defense. What do you mean by that? Well, complementary football, and I think it's a great question. Probably the thing that's most misunderstood by a lot of fans is they think, boy, this offense is really great. It's fast-paced, it's good, it's a point a minute. If only we can play great defense and stop people and shut people out. Man, we can score 50 points and hold everybody to 10 points. Boy, we'd be great. Okay, complementary football says that if you're going to run at a high pace, we did on, I broke down, for example, Tennessee, University of Tennessee, and Josh Heupel. what he was involved in running at Oklahoma, what he was involved in running at as head coach at Central Florida, and what he's going to run at Tennessee is a high-octane, fast-paced offense that will probably be on the field 20 more snaps offensively than there were last year. That means that there's quicker intervals between the snap and the next snap. What that does, it increases, the frequency of your defense having to be on the field and in a quicker, shorter intervals. So if a defense gets off the field, they force a turnover, they get you off the field on downs, they go to the sideline. If you are really fast-paced on offense, even if you score quick, which you like the score, but if it scores quick, you're back on the field defensively. You don't have as much recover time, adjustment time, and you end up being on the field for maybe 15 to 25 more snaps defensively than you normally do. Common sense. If I got a team, the same team, same personnel, same coaching, they're on the field for 60 snaps in one game. Next game, they're on the field for 85 snaps. Percentage-wise, we don't know anything about the opponents that they're playing there. Percentage-wise over time, what do you think is going to happen? Common sense. If you're on the field for 25 more snaps, 15 more snaps, 20 more snaps a game, odds are you're going to give up more points, right? It's an important part to understand. Now you throw in the fact that the bigger picture, if you become a high-octane, offensive-oriented type team, you become known for that. It may be a little bit harder to recruit elite defensive players because hey, I may not look as good. I may be on the field more snaps. I may be worn down more. Well, you got to have not only good players, but you have to have more good defensive players. And are you going to be able to go and recruit enough of those elite players when your whole focus is about what you do on defense? Alabama is a perfect example at the high end of what they do and what they've done. If you go back under the early tenure of Nick Saban, when they won their first few titles, it was about offense, running the football, play action, and we're going to wear you down. And we're going to lock you up on defense, and you're not going to get much there. Well, it worked. But as the rules started to change, it makes all the sense in the world to take advantage of the rules, which 9 out of 10, easy 9 out of 10, is going to favor the offense. So, if you do not take advantage of that, you're behind the 8 ball. You're losing ground if you don't take advantage of the offensive rules advantages. So, RPOs, quick pace. You can't block a team up front. You're not good enough on the offensive line. You know what you can do? You can go so fast at such a high rate that the defense is gassed and they can't line up and make checks. So you don't need to be any better. You will get them before they can line up and adjust, and you can beat them with pace, and you don't have to be as good, and you can have positive results. But when you do that, you hurt your defense to a certain degree. Well, Alabama, look at what they have been under Mac Jones, under Tua. A dynamic offense. Loads of great receivers. Throwing the football, scoring a bunch of points, sometimes scoring so quickly that their defense is on the field for a lot more snaps. And yet, people will say, they lost their edge on defense, they're not the same. Well, of course not. Now, Alabama still recruits great defensive linemen. Alabama still recruits great linebackers. Alabama still recruits great corners, safeties. But those same level of elite players, and you can pick it apart and say, these guys were better than these guys, but the talent drop on defense hasn't been precipitous. I mean, certainly it's been really good, but the style of play on offense certainly affects the Alabama defense, which is still good. It's certainly championship level, but they don't shut you out and dominate you anymore. They dominate you on offense. Why? Because that's the flow. Well, so here's the real key is what is complementary football? It's taking your philosophy, complementing your offense to the defense. If you're going to be built, and we're seeing Georgia perhaps make that change and adjustment to be a little bit more attacking with the passing game and adjusting to that offensive style. Georgia under Kirby Smart has basically been running a lot of what they did when he was an assistant at Alabama. And when he did that at Alabama, they had success at a lot of what they've done and what Kirby believes into that, a defensive coach. It's tough. We're going to stop people, we're going to run the football, and we're going to control it. They've got an ability with a 4-minute offense to be effective and with a great defense, keep them in every game. But they have found to come up short a little bit in explosiveness in the passing game. Different reasons for that. They haven't developed it quite as well. They haven't been as patient with it. Had some injuries, a lot of factors, but they haven't been as successful overall. The ability, complementary football, is the ability to do multiple things well. On defense, you got to stop the run. You've got to stop the run. That means if you can't stop the run with your base front, you're going to have extra numbers in the box, extra players in the box to defend the run, because that's the quickest way to die on the field is to not stop the run. You got a chance of them screwing up the pass, throwing a bad pass, dropping the ball. You got no hope if you can't stop the run. So you got to stop the run, and you hope to stop the run with 7. This is why we say, go play a lot of 8-man fronts with it. Gotta stop the run. If you can stop it with your base front, you've got what? Maximum guys in coverage. You can play too high. You can be real effective. Very, very important to understand. You've got to be successful defensively. Now, how do you define defenses? Are different than before. It used to be, hey, yards and who had the best. Statistically, forget all that crap. How many points do you give up? What's your third down efficiency? What's your red zone efficiency? That's what's important. Can you get off the field on third downs? Can you force field goals instead of touchdowns? That's what's important. That's how you define good defenses today. So on offense, it's great to be able to score and score at a rapid pace. But it's equally as important when you get a lead. You got a 17-point lead in the second half. First downs are every bit as important as points. It means more to go on a 4 or 5 minute drive, eat clock, and get points. That's the difference. So when you are going to be a fast-paced offense, and you're not going to be good enough on defense, your defense better be athletic, speedy. They may not stop you, but maybe they can cause turnovers. Because we can't stop you, we're going to have to force you into some mistakes and take the ball away. And if we can steal an extra possession and a half with our offense and we're going to score all the time, that's their chance of winning. That's complementary ball. Now, that's going to only get you to a certain level because you're going to have a day where things may not work out as good on offense. And what do you have to hang your hat on then? Your defense is not good enough. You go home and, that's the difference between, boy, that team's good, that team's exciting, but they're not championship level. You've got to be able to be equally as effective in a 4-minute offense as you are in a 2-minute offense. Alabama could score quickly, attack, but when they get a lead, run the football, eat 4-6 minutes, and basically salt the game away. They averaged 19 points per game in the second half last year. They could have scored a lot more. They didn't. And it's not a good sign if you're scoring a lot of points in the fourth quarter. Because that means you're behind. That means you have to to score a lot of points, to come from behind, or because you can't stop an opponent. You've got to score and score and score. What you want to be able to do, not sit on the ball. Got to be able to compress the game, shorten the game. If you're going to be a really good defensive team, a dominant defensive team, you're going to have to run the football. You're going to have to control it. You're going to have to be good in 4 minutes. But you can't get so this is all we're going to do is run 4 minutes to where you can't throw the football in a 2-minute situation. No question. No question. I think there's an important understanding that certain programs could maybe recruit at a level or do certain things that can be maybe equally as good at both things. Some programs have to pick and choose. But offensive balance is key. I think Oklahoma has reached a level where they're really good. Why are they not there? Alex Grinch is not a good enough defensive coordinator. Nothing wrong with Alex Grinch as the defensive coordinator. He's a very good coach. Oklahoma's not had as much defensive personnel, but they've got some good ones. But for Oklahoma to become, for example, a team that's not just good enough to win the Big 12, but to advance in the playoffs, they're going to have an offense that they've got the offense, and I said this, and I talked about this on LandryFootball.com. It's probably the best-looking offense. If I were to predict who has all the components to have the best-looking offense in college football this year, it's probably Oklahoma. From the quarterback with experience to receivers to back, the offensive line, the scheme, the coaching, the play calling, it's probably Oklahoma. We'll see. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. They're going to be good. It's just whether they're the best, we'll see. But if they don't learn how to compress games, shorten games, run the football effectively, their defense will never be good enough to win championships because they're going to fall short. Because having to win only one way, having to win in a shootout game eventually is going to catch up with you. Having to win in a close, compressed, just 4-minute offense, you can't score quickly, it's going to catch up with you. You got to be multiple. That's what complementary football is. Having your offense complement your defense. It has to mesh. Good defense, help your defense. Play to it. Protect your defense. If you don't have it, you got to help it even more in a different way. Rock Westfall says there's a bitter NHL civil war between the analytics crowd and eye test guys, far worse than football, yet football has them too. Is there any analytic metrics that works for you? I don't see any value in it. Things such as third down conversion, turnovers, hurries speak for themselves. Anything beyond that seems like a con. Analytics is a fancy term for statistics. Most of the statistics that you see put forth by analytics are not very useful because they're very generic. They tell a story, but often it tells the wrong story. There's a saying in statistics. Statistics are like a bikini. What they reveal is intriguing. What they cover up is vital. It has value. It has value. Only to the standpoint of you look at it, then you got to go to the film. Why? The numbers tell you a story. But why are the numbers that way? Well, they're just that way. No, they're not just that way. Why? You can't say that, well, you know, percentage-wise, you should go for it this amount of times on third down or for that. You've got to apply football intellect into it. It's fine to go for it on third or fourth down if it's you've got an advantage, a blocking advantage. You're blocking their three technique consistently. It makes all the sense to go for it. If you're not effective, you're struggling at the line of scrimmage, probably not as sensible to do that. That's from a strategic standpoint. Then what's the situation in the game? You can't scout that opponent. You better not settle for field goals. You better score points. So overall, analytics that factors are into everybody doesn't make sense. But how would it fit affects you and what it means for you does have value. But here's the analytics that matter. It comes off of film grading. So it's not like, well, third down percentage of this. No, it's in the red zone, the most effective play that we run against this formation with this level of personnel that we're going against. We're better off in a bunch set in this situation, in a tight set here, 2 wides here, 12 personnel. This is the personnel grouping, this is the formation, and this is the play series that works best in our recent history, our long-range history, and against this personnel. That's what matters. But the analytics folks, they don't understand how to break down film, so they throw out generic stuff that sounds good, but is not applicable to a certain situation. I mean, it's kind of like a scheme, right? Schemes don't win. Coaches that can come up with schemes and adjust their schemes, modify their schemes, they win. You know, you've got to be able to execute whatever your plan is. Why is it that a lot of it, Nick Saban assistants, for example, Bill Belichick assistants, don't have success? Because, hey, they're not Bill Belichick and Nick Saban, but they got the system, they got the plan, Chris. Okay, they can't implement it the same way. The organizational structure is not the same. They don't have as many resources in college. They have to go through a lot of layers of bureaucracy to get certain things done. And they bring that system in. You know about Bill Belichick and Nick Saban's system? It's not the same. It changes. Now, how they give the message, how they do things, look at how Alabama has changed how they do things in the weight room. They've changed from Scotty Cochran to what they're doing now in the last 2 years. So if you take a system and a scheme and you bring it over to your place, what happens when people adjust to your adjustments? Can you stay one step ahead? Can you find it? I mean, think about this. Did the first cell phone you got, was that really good? Probably thought it was really good. Now the next one comes out, it's better, it's this, it's that, and they refine it. They do. Football's the same way. The ability to be able to see the game, have a vision, understand what works, what doesn't, how we can modify what we do. In New England and in Alabama, because those are the two standards, the message doesn't change, how they do it. But what they do inside the message may be a little different. Used to be at Alabama, their safeties were big physical linebacker-looking guys to defend the run. Now they're corner-looking guys because they got to cover, because now they're going to have to defend the RPOs. I mean, they have to adjust to that. You have to play that way. We got to score more points, so we're going to run RPO. I'm going to bring a guy in that can do that. That's coaching. Okay, but understanding that through film, making your own analytics is what's important. Appreciate that question. And thoughts there, Rock. Hope all is well. Again, certainly we're running out of time today, but certainly join us in the chat room as we do this show. We will certainly be back tomorrow to do a live taping of the Landry Football Podcast. A reminder again to check out LandryFootball.com for all the latest film room breakdowns, analysis, previews of all the college teams, the pro teams, the notebooks every day. We're going to take you and get you ready for this season better than ever before. So check it out today over at LandryFootball.com. Take advantage of the scouting season offer. And once again, a reminder to search for, like, and subscribe to the Landry Football Podcast channel on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, so you can listen to us here each and every Monday through Friday. We've got a show for you. Be part of SEC Football and Beyond on Mondays and Thursdays live. That shows will drop Tuesday and Friday mornings. We'll do the show Tuesday at 5 p.m. Central, Scout's Eye on college and pro football, and then on Wednesdays we'll do the Landry Football Podcast. So a lot of football. We found a new home with the great folks at the Podcast Park. So appreciate you joining us. We'll talk to you again tomorrow, same time, same channel, live. And if you missed any part of this show, make sure that you sign up for Landry Football's podcast channel. on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so that you can listen to it. The great thing about going to it is you can go to it and you can see the little different segments. So if you don't have time to listen to the whole thing and you want to hear certain things, we got it for you. So check it out today. Appreciate you. Join us again tomorrow. Talk to you next time. Have a great evening, everybody.